All right, we are live. And I'm just curious to see who's going to be my peeps here. I see one person. Hey, listen, when you come in, if you don't mind, where if you're looking on you're using YouTube, just say hi, just so I can see if some of these features that I have are working. Let's see if I can do that. Yeah, just say hi in the chat, and we're going to wait, allow a couple more people to pop in. But when you show up, if you can, just in the chat, go ahead and say hi and let me know where you're coming from. So we're going to put those things on the screen, and you'll be able to show up on the screen if you do that. So we will wait. And just like I was always taught, if nobody shows up, you do the talk anyway. It's actually the easiest way to do the talk because you don't have to get nervous. But in any case, there will be some people watching this as a recording. So I will, in a moment, start my talk anyway, and that would be communication breakdown. I'm very excited to do this. Very excited. This is the first time that I've ever done something like this outside of my regular, ordinary business. So we're going to wait and see if others show up live. This is not going to end up in this form on YouTube. This is just for the live stream. But for those that hit the notification, they should get a notification. So as you're coming in, I just want to know who's out there and who is listening. So in the comments, there should be a section probably over there in the comments where you can say hello. And if there's somebody else that you wanted to be here, this would be the time to let them know. We will start in just about a minute. Probably going to go, whenever I speak, it's somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. But yeah, just when you pop in here, please, jump in the comments. Let me know where you're coming from, if I know you, who you are, and we will have some fun. I'll give you one interesting fact about doing a live stream. It's one thing to do a live stream in a presentation mode, but it's a scary thing to do. You don't even know if it's working. So these people that are popping in right now, if you can see me and you can hear me, please say that, in the chat. You should have a little comment section that you can say, hi, this is so-and-so coming in from so-and-so, and we can interact. This is going to be a really laid back version beta test of this module from this course that I'm doing. So once again, if you pop in, say hi. And if you can't say hi and you're trying to say hi because that feature's not working, well, I apologize for continuously doing it. So I'm gonna say hi in the chat there because I see some people coming in now. Hello, everyone. I always say great morning in the morning, so I'm going to say great evening, humans. And there we go. I'm the first one in there. So if somebody else wants to piggyback on that, you can go ahead and do that. But what I'm going to end up doing, because I'm recording this, is getting rid of all of this fluff in the beginning right now and making that recording to send out to people. But I'd love some interaction, love some questions, love some insights from people, because this is going to be a segment, but a master class in communication. And it's just something that I just absolutely love. And it's live, it's real time. So I've got a cat here and a dog. So there's a very good chance that I might have to tend to those folks. So I'm going to get started, and I will, as people come in, I'd love to know those that are here right now, because we're on a couple of different platforms. If you can, place a comment in there. You don't even have to let me know who you are. I just want to know if it works, because we've got this screen right here where I can see the comments. So I see people coming in. If you have the ability to comment and say hello, if I know you, let me know who you are. If you want to hide that from me, that's perfectly fine. But I'm just curious to know if you guys have the ability to put a comment in there. So I'll be so excited the first time that I see a comment. Maybe it's on like some sort of a delay or something like that. But nonetheless, I'm Dr. JC Doornick, aka the Dragon. You might be a podcast listener. You might be someone from the health transformation land. You might be somebody that I've met on platforms like LinkedIn or Clubhouse. Big ups to the Breakfast with Champions group. But nonetheless, if you've never seen me before, this is what I look like. This is the dragon that wears a hat that says and some glasses that have no lenses in them. That's what you find out about me. So feel free to, if you can, say hi in the chat. I want to know what you guys are thinking. I want to know if you have any challenging questions. And this is about communication, and anything goes, right? We're going to talk about things that are going to leverage your ability to, level up your communication, level up your sales, level up your relationship building, and all sorts of things. So this is like big stuff. So I accept all challenges. That's the best part of it. The best part about communication and learning these skills is not just knowing about them, it's putting them into play. So let me get started, and I'm going to make an attempt, because this is the first time I'm doing this, to share my screen. And okay, so now I'm sharing my screen, and I wonder if you guys can still hear me, because I can't see myself anymore. Let me see if there's a way of doing that. No. Let's see. I don't know where. But anyway, Dr. JC Doornick, this is Communication Breakdown. We're going to be talking about mastering the art of asking effective questions. So I don't know if you guys can see that, because I don't know if you guys have the ability to comment, but I will show some slides, but I'll come back and interact with you like this. I sure hope that you guys can hear me. So that's one of the things about the interaction, that I might go ahead and do this whole talk and find out that nobody can hear me. So why me? That's the first thing that I want to share with you. I'll put that slide up, but I'm an interesting character. Why would you be spending some time with me learning about communication? Well, my resume checks out. I've built multiple 7-figure businesses, and I know a lot of people say that, but I'm an author, I'm a podcaster, I'm a humanitarian. I've done a lot of stuff. I've had the honor of being a public speaker on big stages, up to 15,000 people live. But I've learned from the school of life. I've learned through failure. I've earned what I know, and I'm going to share with you through failure. And I think that's important. You should know right off the bat that you're going to fail at a lot of stuff. I like to call myself also a recovering BS artist. I won't say the actual swear, because we never know who's here. And I've been turned humble by life, and I've become what you call an ethical persuader. We're going to be talking a little bit about ethical persuasion, which is different than persuasion. And I've got a 3rd-degree black belt in talking too much. So I have to be careful of that. And some people that know me will be probably laughing. But I'm also somebody that has become obsessed, and I'm going to share my story with you in a second, obsessed with human behavior and communication. And the reason why, and this is why I find this topic so fascinating, I've just always been curious to learn what makes people do and do not. I never was interested in manipulating people and get convincing. Well, that's a lie. Of course, I went through a phase of my life where I wanted to do that. But for the majority of my life, I was just fascinated with the idea of a human being. I mean, we all want the same things. We all want to be happier, healthier, and wealthier. But when somebody presents you with an opportunity to have what you want, or acquire what you want, there's this weird interaction. There's so many different things. There's emotional things happening. There's energetic things. There's, the word exchange and what we call the frame. But I've always been fascinated with what it is that a human being requires in order to take action. So where did all this start? And I'll try to make this part of the story really, really short, because it's a long story and it'll come out in my book. What you're going to get tonight is you're going to get some really, really cool tools that you can put into play. But it's important that I let you know why I've decided to become somebody that is like a sommelier and a connoisseur of human behavior and specifically communication, which is a fascinating topic. Um, I always get a little bit in my heart and I lose a little bit of my breath when I think about this story. But, I'm a guy that came into life as one of the most extremely confident, borderline cocky people in the world. And long story short, I was confronted with a wall up in front of me. And I was warned about this by a mentor one time, just because I was so confident and moving through life so fast. Like I thought I was impervious to anything. Sure enough, I hit a wall. And I've experienced the darkness of despair, to the point where I was 100% certain that I wanted to check out of this world. And I don't know if anybody resonates with that, but it's not a good time. It's not a good time at all. So, long story short, I was about 3 months into this, and thank God my family came to my aid and didn't let me check out. But I went and saw a therapist, and that therapist did something that day in less than an hour. I think it was about 45 minutes. And the funny thing is, I don't even remember her name. There's a lot more to the story, but something happened in my interaction with that therapist that day that gave me what I call a snap moment. I experienced a complete reversal of how I was feeling. I was in a complete dark tunnel with no way out. And something that happened during that conversation with that therapist completely reversed it. It was like I was like completely offline, just completely oblivious to any other option other than removing my life. And all of a sudden, complete reversal. And I didn't really care what she did because I was like, it was an amazing opportunity for me to like all of a sudden have a breath of life. But I made a decision to do two things that day. And I don't know if anybody's ever had one of those moments, maybe it's your come to Jesus moment, but I was confronted with extreme darkness and I moved into the light. I was messed up and then I became blessed up. So I made two decisions that day, and that's what's brought me here with you today. Those two decisions were that I was never going to go back. That's one thing I said, I'm going to do everything in my power to not go back to that dark place because I don't want to be there again. And life is tough. But the second decision I made is I was going to spend the rest of my life learning everything that I can about what happened in that office today, but also human behavior, because I was going to spend the rest of my life in any way I could helping other people not experience that. I don't know if you can resonate that as kind of a pay it forward thing. So that's why I got deeply entrenched in all of those things. And I made this distinction of what happened with that therapist that day. And what she did was ask me some very, very good questions. She asked me some very effective questions that progressively led me to this place where I made this epiphany. So I became extremely fascinated with human communication because that's all she needed to do. Nobody could help me. Nobody could help me. And all of a sudden, she showed me a couple of things via asking questions that woke me up and brought me online. So I became extremely fascinated, borderline obsessed with the whole framework of communication, which led me to read a ton of books. So I just want everybody to know that story. And I want everybody to know that I didn't learn this stuff from like some sort of a TEDx talk. I learned this stuff by making a lot of mistakes. And that's one key I want to share with you right now. Some of the things that I'm going to teach you tonight are going to really resonate with you and you're going to be like stoked about them. I'm going to teach you some concepts, some framework, and some actual scripts. And I'm also going to offer you guys, anybody that reaches out to me, I'm going to give you a QR code if you stay at the end. And I'm going to hand you guys a bunch of really, really cool assets, like my top 20 starters, my morning routine, a bunch of stuff that has not only saved my life, but has helped me kind of hone this craft. But I think that everybody here needs to know one thing is once you're empowered and armed with some of the stuff that I'm going to share, concepts and skill sets, you'll know something. Learning is nothing more than a distraction in the absence of action. So it's one thing to take action, but there's another word that I want to share with you, and that's called praction. This is probably one of the most valuable things that I could share with you right now. And that is when you first start doing this stuff, remember, I learned it the hard way. I learned it from saying something and it not working and doing 1,000 things that didn't work until I found something that did work in communication, relationship building, and sales. So traction is where practice meets action. And what I want you to understand is that don't be afraid of failure because it's a huge part of this thing. You have to practice and you'll get better and you'll be motivated and you'll believe in yourself down the road. Okay. But in the beginning, if you've never done this stuff before, or if it's new, you might be a skilled communicator, but you're going to try some new stuff. You won't be good at it at first. And that's why you have to practice being in action. So there you go. There's one of my first made up words, praction. So I want to share with you a couple of tenets that we use in our private community. So you'll hear me mention that from time to time. We call it the Make Sense Academy. The Make Sense Academy is where we take this stuff. This is one module of a 6-module course called Communication Breakdown. That is going to be spectacular. You're getting it tonight for free. It's going to be sold on a course platform. But in the Make Sense Academy, everything that I do is included. So anytime I create a course, that stuff goes in there and they get that for free. So understand that, that's something that you guys all have access to. If you want to get business coaching, if you want mentorship, and if you want to get access to all of my stuff, not just communication breakdown, but also my interface response system and a lot of headspace tools, morning routine. We have daily masterminds and things like that. That's where we actually put this stuff into play and do the work. You're going to want to check out the Make Sense Academy. You're going to have live interaction with me and my community on a daily basis. And it's the coolest thing that I've ever done in my life. So this is just one module. We'll meet once a month and I will give you little tidbits. We'll have guests. I'm going to start a new series called Communication Breakdown. So I'm beta testing this one here. So there's 2 tenets that we use in Make Sense Academy. And I think that we have a screen for that. Let me see. I don't know if this is going to work. So I call this the inner game of communication. So these are the 2 core tenets that we use in Make Sense Academy. The first one is it's who you are that determines how well what you do works. What that means is that it goes be, do, have. In order for you to have the things that you want, and this leads back to praction, there's a good chance that you're going to need to become a different version of yourself that gets better results and has the things that you want. So I just really want that to settle in, that if you're out there doing hard work and practicing consistency and all the things that you're supposed to do and not getting any results, it's because you have to evolve into the right person for the job. So that's back to praction. And then the second one is it's only when you change the way that you look at things that the things that you look at begin to change. And what that means is that you're perceiving, this leads right into communication. That's why I wanted to share those things. When you go out there, you're going to have to practice and you're going to have to start understanding yourself and other people a lot more. One of the main reasons people are not good communicators and they don't know how to say the right things or ask the right questions is because they don't understand people, right? That's why I wear these glasses, these silly glasses without a lens. It's to remind me that it's changing the way that I look at things, checking out different perspectives and being open and curious. That's going to give me the ability to have the things that I look at change. And also, when I present myself, I always remind myself to check in and ask myself, who am I presenting as right now? Because it's who you are that determines how well what you do works. So whenever I don't get results that I desire, and I put my foot in my mouth, which I've spent most of my life like that, I always just check with myself. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. So I'm going to share with you something right now that is really, really fascinating that most people don't know. And this is kind of like your first lesson in understanding people. Okay. So let me get this up. Okay. So what I perceive is that we're having a global breakdown of decision making. I want you to look at these funny pictures because they kind of have a Pink Floyd The Wall vibe. but this is what happens when you use ChatGPT to make an image. But I think it's really cool and I'm going to keep it. So there's a global breakdown in decision making. And what that means is that we have a crisis where human beings are struggling to make decisions. This is something called the Millennium Project. And the Millennium Project is a fascinating thing. The Millennium Project is something that has uncovered 15 of the greatest global challenges facing humanity. So you're going to see things in there that you'd expect, and those are things like climate change, do we have enough water, the rich versus poor gap, population increase, and the resources to sustain that population increase. And then, of course, terrorism, crime, etc. But the one I want to focus on right now, and this is something that has been identified as a global challenge. This is something that is affecting us worldwide. And that is number 9. That's why I've got it in red. And that is the capacity to decide. Now, the reason why I want you to know this in this, this class that I'm teaching right now is when you're talking to somebody, they don't have a good ability to decide. And I'm going to share with you why. So another reason to not beat yourself up, but another reason to get good at communicating so you can guide people to making decisions, not unethically persuade them, but guide them to a place where it would make sense and it's in alignment with what they want. So why is this a big problem? Think about this. The world that we live in right now is completely saturated by content, conditioning, and cognitive overload. A lot of stuff, right? And we've lost touch with how to think for ourselves. Now, you might not recognize that until I tell that to you. We've lost touch with how to think for ourselves. We're like parrots, right? We don't even know it. We've become comfortable and fluent in what to think. We've been taught what to think, and we don't even know that we're being taught what to think, but we're comfortable with it. You might understand the concept of algorithms and things like that. But it started when you were a kid. When you were a kid in the formative years, your subconscious mind was formed, right? Your brain was forming, and everything that you heard was etched into your brain without permission and awareness. And then we move into the repetitive consumption of the same news, media, and community that we run with, right? And what I mean by run with is understand that the way that you look at the world has a lot to do with who you're hanging out with and the information that you consume. And then that stuff is further after the formative years, programming our brains on what to think. And that's affecting our decision making. So take note that we consume stuff every day, right? I like to say that what you consume with regularity ends up being what you assume with regularity. So the next time you assume something, whether it's in a conversation and you make some sort of a label or judgment call on somebody, which can happen if you're trying to start a conversation or somebody's approaching you, the next time you assume something, just know where assumptions come from. I'm going to get into a little bit of the anatomy in this class, but most of the decisions that you're making and the perceptions that you're having are not really including you in the process. And now most of our decisions are not ours, right? They're actually reflexive. They're emotional and they're preconditioned survival-based things. So the reason why I want you to know that is because there's a solution for that. So here we are. We want to learn how to become better communicators. And I'm going to hand you some tools and scripts and things like that. But if you don't understand what I just told you, that we have a global crisis that's affecting humanity where people don't know how to think for themselves. So if I ask you a question and you're programmed to think a certain way and I don't understand that, I'm going to lose, right? So what I need to understand, and this is why I'm going to teach you a couple of different types of questions that you ask, I need to ask a question that makes you what? Makes you think for yourself. Because if I ask you a question and I just get a programmed answer, that's not where I want to go. Because you're programmed to say no. You're programmed to run. You're programmed to make sure that every planet is in alignment before you say yes, right? So I need to learn how the anatomy of the brain works, and I think that's where we're going next. We need to learn how the anatomy of the brain works, because there's different levels of your brain, and there's different levels of the way your brain makes decisions. And one of them is conscious, and for the most part, they're unconscious. So this is really, really important stuff. So I have this segment that I call Why Questions Matter. The reason why questions matter is this. I told you my story, and that was a while ago. I'm 53 now, and that happened, I think, when I was in my late 20s, right? Tough, tough time. But in my 20 years as an entrepreneur, right, I've discovered that the most powerful tool for business was for me to learn the science, art, and philosophy of effective questions. So let me just break that down. So the science of asking questions lies in the structure and the strategy. So you got to learn the structure and the strategy, but there's an art to it. And you can read books that teach you how to sell and manipulate people, right? But we're talking about ethical persuasion here. But you do have to recognize that there's an art, and that's your delivery. There's got to be tone and energy and asking questions that are thought-provoking, right? Rather than program, evoking. So there's tone, timing, and energy. But then there's a philosophy to it, right? This is the intent behind the question. So a lot of people come to me and they want to learn how to build their business, but at the same time they say, but I don't want to come off salesy, right? What's funny about that is if you think that you're going to come off salesy, you probably are being salesy, right? But if you have it in your heart and you want to serve and you want to meet the needs and demands and wants and must-haves of people and use your product and service as something that can help them bypass and succeed where they have not succeeded before, you have to understand that there's a lot of other things involved in this, and energy and intention is really important. So I always ask people, are you seeking in a conversation to understand or to be understood? Think about that for a second. If you're learning some of the stuff I teach you, but you're using it to get something, right? That's different than using it to help somebody see something, right? So are you seeking to understand, or is your goal to be understood, right? That's when it's about you. And you got to catch yourself. And there it is right there. If you're screwing this up like I did and I still do every now and then, that's perfectly fine. Do you bring hidden agenda and find yourself looking for tools and tricks that manipulate people and try to get them, or are you trying to get them? So there's the distinction right there. When you're communicating, are you looking to get something or get something? Because this is the one that you want to learn how to do. And the most valuable thing you can do in an interface of a conversation is earn somebody's trust. And the moment that they feel that it's about you and you want to get them, you lose that trust. And trust is everything. So I said here, thou shalt not kid thyself. There's an 11th commandment. A lot of people don't know this, but it is thou shalt not kid thyself. And what that means is, let's be real. This is really, really important because we're going to get into the fun stuff now. Learning is nothing more than a distraction in the absence of action. So I encourage you to refrain from just consuming this. The people that are here live or watching the edited version of this when I put it on YouTube, if you just leave this knowing something, it can very easily create the illusion that you're moving forward, just knowing it, because it's new. It's like, wow, I just got this big insight and I learned some skills. You got to put it into praction. Remember, practice meeting action, and you got to know that you're going to screw it up. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that the person in any room that is the most successful, best communicator, most wealthy, happy, whole, integrated life, the whole thing, is the person that's made the most mistakes. So get it out of your head that making mistakes is hard, or is the hard part, or the reason why you don't want to do it. Fear of failure, fear of overwhelm. Guys, that's why I put myself out there like I'm doing right now. I am completely not caring about making mistakes, because making mistakes is a positive approach to moving forward, because I'm in play right now. So put this stuff into play. So let's talk about the power of questions in sales. I love this. This is not everything from the course, by the way. We're doing this organic. And I guess, once again, I'm going to invite you guys, if you can, please put, let me see, I got somebody calling me right now. Let's see if they're telling me something. Oh, okay, good. Somebody just texted me and said, we can hear you, but you can't comment. Thank you. Finally. That's great. So don't start texting me all your questions. I don't know why you can't comment, and I apologize that. But this is something you might want to write down. The goal of asking questions is to uncover opportunity to become useful. Think about that. When I'm trying to ask questions, what I'm thinking is, how can I help them? And in my morning routine, and I'll give you my morning routine if you request it. And by the way, the easiest way to reach out and find me would be to, just Google me, or, let's put it up there right now. You can scan um, our Make Sense Academy. That should pop up there. If you go to this right here, this let's get rid of that. Boop. If you scan this with your phone, that'll take you to our Make Sense Academy, or you can just search me on Instagram, Dr. JC Doornick. Um, I'll even give you my cell phone to text. That's 914-548-2369. Reach out to me, ask me questions. I apologize that you can't. Next month, we'll figure out the comments. So the goal of asking questions is to uncover the opportunity to become useful. So when I wake up in the morning, this is something you can start doing, because your state management and setting yourself up for success is really, really important. Okay. So when I wake up in the morning and I have this morning routine, the first thing that I do when I go from unconscious to conscious, eyes closed to eyes open, I capture that moment. It's like a 1 second moment where all of a sudden my computer boots up, right? The first thing that I do is I say thank you. I always start with gratitude, because what happens when you start with gratitude is it focuses on what you have and it pauses all the BS that's coming from yesterday. So I always start by saying thank you. And then I grow that gratitude. I'm thankful for this bed that I'm in, my wife next to me, the roof over my head, the opportunity to be with you guys here, all these books, and air to breathe, this nice canister of cold water, all that stuff. But what's happening when I'm in gratitude is it stops yesterday's BS from loading up. We're just like computers. But here's the thing about how I set myself up to ask the right questions. I put my feet on the ground and I look up at the sky, and I challenge everybody to do this. I look up at the sky and I actually say this. I say, how can I help? I ask the big guy in the sky how I can help. And you know what? I've never heard him answer. And that's the whole point. I don't know. He doesn't give me an answer. So you know what I do all day is I spend the day trying to figure it out. So everybody I meet, I'm thinking, how can I help? So I love that statement that the goal of asking questions from an open and curious place is to find out how you could have the opportunity of becoming useful. I love that. Okay. So another one, I have slides, but I'm just going to go through this because I'm realizing that we're going to probably eat up too much time. I'll do a full recording of this course and send it out to everybody that reached out and wanted to attend this. So we've heard the saying that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? And what that's saying is that you can show somebody something, but you can't make them drink. Now in sales, they teach you how to make people drink, but that's not what we're doing here. We're talking about ethical persuasion. So what you can do, though, is you can salt their oats. So you can lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink, but you can salt its oats. And the way that we salt their oats is by asking powerful questions, empathetic questions. This is another reason why I want to teach you guys how to ask effective questions, right? Let's get rid of this. So that's, if you want to, that'll take you to our Make Sense Academy. Get rid of that. So by asking a question, I'm not just looking for an answer, but I'm making you think about something, right? And if I learn how to ask effective questions, what I can do in that process is help you see something that you couldn't see before. So that's the way I can salt their oats, right? And also how you lead is very, very important. So let's talk about two different types of questions. If you can get this and start practicing, I'm going to teach you what not to do, and I'm going to teach you some things to do. So there's two types of questions, and let me put these slides up. And for those of you that are texting me, I would love you to please do me a favor and let me know if you can still hear me when I have this up. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay, great. So give me a text, my friends that are texting me, and let me know if you can hear me while I'm doing this. Okay, so there's two types of questions. One of them is called a verb-led question, and the other is an interrogative question. So what I'm going to show you is what a verb-led question looks like and an interrogative question. And if you're using verb-led questions, that's what's screwing everything up. Let's see. Yes, can still hear you, but you can't see me. Very strange. Thank you, Jonathan. So the two types of questions are verb-led and interrogative. So let's look at verb-led. This is the mistake that everybody makes. What is a verb-led question? A verb-led question is one that starts with an auxiliary verb. And those are questions like can, should, is, do, will. I'm telling you right now, if you learn those words and you catch yourself doing them, stop it. Stop it. So when you ask questions that begin with those words, those auxiliary verbs, it leads to people being closed and giving binary answers. A binary answer is like this or that. They'll say things like yes, no, and maybe. There's a very, very low chance of the yes, by the way, when you ask a verb-led question, and a high chance of maybe and no. People often feel, let's see, what is this? Can see you too. Oh, cool. You can see me. Very strange. Hello. It's a good thing I wasn't doing anything crazy. So people often feel confronted and manipulated or persuaded when you start off with a verb. Think about it. Can you do that? You're backing them up against the wall. So that's what it is that you don't want. That's what we call being salesy and pushy. It's verb-led questions. So they also activate resistance. So now that I know you can see me, when I cross my arms like this, I call this the crossing of the arms. This is the way people are when you first meet them. And if you ask a verb-led question, they keep their arms crossed in protection of their space, right? So once the arms are crossed, then you have to learn a whole other set of strategies to uncross the arms. What I want to teach you is a different type of question that doesn't speak to the automatic subconscious part of the brain. I'm going to teach you to ask questions to the prefrontal cortex, the conscious part of the brain that is thought-provoking and thinks. So there it is right there. Verb-led examples that you want to stay away from. Can you afford this? Do you want to get started? Oh, God, a lot of people say that. Do you want to get started? Should you try something different, right? Can, do, should. That's not good shift, right? I always like to say, this is some good shift. That's some bad shift right there. That's shifting all over them when you use should. You know that. So these questions put people in a corner. They feel pressure, right? And the moment that they think it, they pull back. So if you're asking questions and you're doing it a lot and you're getting a lot of yes, maybes, or no's, right? That's what's happening. You're bullying. And here's another thing. A lot of times when you ask a verb-led question, you get a yes, right? It's really just a soft, unclear, like strategy to get the hell out of there, right? Most answers to verb-led questions, including a yes, are typically attempts to escape, not engage, right? So if you are getting sales, and you're getting approached and they're verb-led questions, look how you respond, right? That's important. So let's talk about interrogative questions. So what is an interrogative question? This is the kind of question you want to learn. So they're questions that begin with those words: who, what, when, where, why, how, and which. I would just write those down, screenshot this, and get those words. If you have to stop and think about it, you want to ask questions starting with them. And I'm going to give you some examples. So these questions, interrogative questions, they invite reflection and discovery. You'll get what's called the head tilt. You'll make people think. One of my favorite all-time questions is, what's it like to be you these days? Right? Now go look up at the top. Second one, what? What's it like to be you these days? Okay? So look for that head tilt. And what that is that's them thinking for themselves. Remember number 9, right? Indicating that you've got them thinking. The greatest thing I like to hear when I ask a good question is people go, that's a good question. That's another sign that they're thinking. So that's an interrogative question. So please keep the conversation about their unique wants, everybody. their needs and their desires, right? Keep that open. Keep that to be the conversation. And it also, if you ask these types of questions, it's going to lead to storytelling and emotional clarity. You're going to give someone the opportunity to share something that they typically were not going to share. And that's valuable stuff. Okay. So here's some examples of interrogative examples. What's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now? Think about it. If I ask you that, you're going to head tilt and you're going to think, okay, how would you feel? There's another one. How would you feel to reach that goal finally, right? You're projecting into the future. You're making them think. They're not just giving a robotic answer. Why is this important to you? Think about those three questions. There's no yes, no, or maybe answer to that. They're going to pontificate. They're going to talk about their favorite radio station, WIIFM, right? What's in it for me? So the person answering these great questions becomes the architect of their transformation. They start painting the picture. I like to call these questions awakening questions because I awaken them to something that they didn't know. And you then become their trusted guide. I love that. So they're grateful as a result of this because you're guiding them and awakening and showing them something. People walk away from a good conversation like that, and you're asking good questions and say, I really like that guy. That was a good conversation. They might even follow up and say, thank you. So here's a toolkit for you. Here's some combo starters. You can take a screenshot of this, or I'll just give it to you if you reach out. What are your current goals? Those are the words. And what is important to you now? These are great questions. How have you handled that in the past? Where do you see yourself in the next 12 months, right? There's no one-shot questions there. Get rid of those verb-like questions. Who do you need to become to achieve this? Who you are determines how well what you do works, right? Who do you need to become to achieve this? Which option feels most aligned with you? So how about when we're facing resistance? You can use the same thing. What's holding you back right now? That's a great question when somebody backs off. How would you know that this is right? This is the right next step. How would you know? I love to ask people questions where they explain to me what needs to happen. What happens if nothing happens? That's a great, great question. And when a prospect ghosts you, right? A lot of people ask me, what do I do when they ghost you? Instead of saying, hey, did you forget? Or the worst one is when you come in and you go, hey, just checking in, just closing the gap, just following up, right? They didn't ask you to follow up. It puts you in this needy role, right? Like you're desperate. So here's what I always say. I'm going to give you a couple examples, but hey, it seems that we've missed each other. Where do you recommend we go from here? I'm going to come back with you guys for a second. That's probably one of the greatest things that you can ask. And it starts with where, right? Whenever I have to follow up with somebody, right? And listen, you guys now know why people struggle with making decisions. So this is not about getting them to make a decision. This is about recognizing that the following up, I'm empathetic to that. So what I do is I say, hey, the last time we spoke, or in that other case, we seem to be missing each other. The last time that we spoke, you mentioned this, this, and this. Where do you suggest we go next? Right? What happens in that moment is what they do? They tell you. They tell you. And you don't have any of these problems that you've been struggling with for so long. Like, what do I say next? What do I do in this situation? So very, very cool stuff. So we're going to get into the science now, and then I'm going to share with you another really, really cool thing. So let me pull this up now that I know that you guys can see me. That's so cool. Thank you for that, Jonathan. Let's go. Boop. Okay. All right. So let's get into this. This is what I need you to know when you're talking to somebody. If you don't understand this about yourself and somebody, you're going to lose. And when I say you're going to lose, you're not going to create a good conversation, and you're going to get an arms crossed person. So what I want you to see here is the areas below the cortex, right? You can see what they represent. The cortex is the conscious part of your brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex. But then you've got the limbic system and then the lower parts of the brain. What I want you to understand, you've heard things like 95% of our brain capacity is unconscious. It's not really true, but it's a good example for this. But what I want you to see is is that when your brain, when you think that you came up with an idea, that idea has already been decided by the lower parts of your brain that are affiliated with memories and the anxiety alarm, like past experiences of failure or getting burned and things like that. All of those things are going on in your brain and they are happening before you know it. So it's the same reason you can go sleepwalking and like make dinner or have a bowl of cereal and not remember it. Your brain has the capacity to act without you. But what happens is when you get an idea in your head and you think it's yours, it's been decided by your lower part. Why is that important? So, and I showed this because I just want to remind you guys that the reason why your brains are programmed the way they are is because of what you're consuming, right? So you're consuming this right now, and I hope that it's a positive thing. But if you want to do something really, really nice, do a systems check on what you're spending your time reading and looking at and scrolling and all of that stuff, because what you consume with regularity is what you assume. All right, so this is cool. Oh, okay. So what you're looking at right here, and I'm sorry that it's a little off the screen there, is basically the system of the stress response system. And the reason why you need to know this, and they don't teach this typically in communication and sales classes, but what happens is that the first thing that happens when you perceive something, when you interface something, is the amygdala lights up. The amygdala is like the fire alarm. The amygdala fires off the alarm, and that's where the idea of fight or flight comes from. The amygdala then checks with the hippocampus, right? So it's the amygdala lights off has its alarm go off, but then what it does before you know it is it checks in with the hippocampus, and the hippocampus is the area of your brain that has memories stored in it. So think about this. The alarm goes off. You're unaware of this. It's happening in a split second, and it goes to the hippocampus, and it's like, hey, this is happening right now. And the hippocampus, like ChatGPT, goes through the system and says, oh, wait, we've got a past experience where that was not good. So they take that and they present it to the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that you call conscious, and you think you came up with an idea. No, it was fed to you and you accept it. That's the way this stuff works, right? So this is what it looks like when somebody has their arms crossed. This is what happens when you ask a verb-led question, and this is what happens when the brain perceives, because you're not asking the right part of the brain the question, right? The interrogative question is a part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, that has to think about things. But if you're asking verb-led questions and confrontational questions, this is what happens. The amygdala signs up or fires off, and the decision is made by your programmed conditioned mind, and you're out. Boom. Yes, no, maybe. But the other way looks like this, right? To uncross somebody's arms, the easiest way is to talk about them, but it's to get them to think, right? When I ask you a question that makes you pontificate and think and head tilt, your arms are not crossed. You know why? Because it's about you. It's about you. And I love that. So let's move on. So I hope you guys are liking this stuff. This is just the beta test, right? We're gonna have this course done in full. The way I'm going to do the course is you're going to actually get a workbook with the course, and you're going to hear the audio of it. Wow, 48 minutes. That's because I started a little bit late. Okay, so that's the science of it. And what I really want you to take away from that is you can't just learn scripts without understanding that stuff, right? Because then you won't take care to really, really think about the interrogative question, right? So if you're asking interrogative questions and you're using those words the right way and getting people to think, what you're doing is bypassing the analytical mind. And that is a skill set that will just provide you with so many wins. It's unbelievable. And that's a great one. Okay, so let's talk about the golden rule of what we call framing. For those of you that like to read books, and I don't know where it is right here, but there's a great book called Pitch Anything by the master of sales, and that's Oren Klaff. And he teaches this idea that when a conversation is taking place, somebody asking questions, somebody answering questions, and a conversation is one where you ask a question and somebody answers and then asks you a question. That's an actually an interactive conversation. So he calls that a frame. So you have to identify when you're talking to somebody that there's a frame. There's a frame going on. There's an energy exchange and all of that stuff. A lot of times you guys will ask questions that have that binary answer that ends the conversation. Yes, no, or maybe. Because then you have to keep asking questions. And if you have to keep asking questions just to get them to give you answers, how do you think that feels? Like this, right? But if I ask you a question that gets you to pontificate, head tilt, and think, right? There's a really good chance that you're going to ask me a question, or I'm going to be able to ask a question about your answer, right? A clarifying question. That's called active listening. For those of you that have taken motivational interviewing, right? Actively listening and asking clarifying questions. That's a really healthy conversation. So I love to use this exercise called the bouncing of the ball. I had a cute picture up there of a ball bouncing. It's not important. But what's important is this. In any interaction, whoever's asking the questions controls the frame. Okay? So if you're asking questions, you're interviewing somebody. You control the conversation, right? So if somebody ever asks you a question, and if you want to take control of the conversation, you just simply answer the question, but then ask a really good question. As soon as you start asking great questions, you control the frame. So I love to use the ball as the analogy. Whoever's holding the ball is talking, but when I bounce the ball, I'm asking a question. I don't want the ball. I want you to have the ball. I want you to be talking about what you care about. And I want to ask questions. And if you ask me a question and bounce it back to me, fantastic. I'm going to ask you another question and bounce it back to you. I want you to hold the ball for the majority of the conversation. That is huge. Your goal is to keep the ball in their hands. So he who holds the ball speaks, right? So if you're holding the ball and you're speaking too much, I'm holding the ball right now, right? Because you guys can't comment, right? Otherwise, if we were interacting, I could ask you some questions and you would answer. But right now, I don't have the ability and it's driving me crazy. But he who holds the ball speaks. He who listens controls the frame, okay? There's a strategy in communication called interview mode. Very, very cool to put somebody in interview mode. There's many strategies that are attached to it. But basically what it is if I ask you questions, you start explaining yourself to me, right? Now, as an ethical conversation, or an ethical persuader, an ethical influencer, if I'm asking you thought-provoking questions that I'm curious to learn about, I'm going to find out everything I need to know to see if there's a fit, right? If it's in sales. So be patient and practice active listening. Let them talk, let them process. So you're going to ask questions like this. What else would you like to know? Think about how they could say nothing, but that's a great question. Where should we go from here? You've heard that one before. What would be the most supportive thing that I could do for you right now? So this strategy, right? Active listening, making it all about them, builds trust. Okay. So that's ethical persuasion. Ethical persuasion, different than unethical persuasion. There's no trust, right? With unethical persuasion, you're learning strategies to get somebody to do something because of like urgency or scarcity or FOMO or things like that. It's happening all over the place. So if I get you to do something because you're worried about missing out, or you don't want to let me down, or I convinced you that your wife will be happy if you do it, that's not ethical, right? So I'm asking questions because I want you to trust me. And the most valuable thing that you could do in a conversation is ask questions that get the person to say the two most important words. So we're wrapping it up here. The two most important words that you can ever hear in a conversation are, "That's right." And here's what I mean by that. If I'm having a conversation with you and I'm learning some of these strategies and I'm asking interrogative questions and I'm bouncing the ball, right? That's what this is all about. The actual questions that you can answer, remember, I have my top 20 starter questions. If you want them, reach out and let me know. I'll put the Make Sense Academy thing up again. This is fun. Okay. So if you do that, or you can just come to my Instagram at Dr. JC Doornick. And I gave you my cell phone, 914-548-2369. So if I'm having a conversation with you and I'm asking great questions and you're pontificating and you're sharing things and I'm actively listening and I'm asking clarifying questions about it, right? You're going to say something to me like, that's right. Now, the moment that I hear that from somebody, it tells me that you are telling me you get it. You get me. That's right. So think about how important it is to ask clarifying questions. Like, you mean like this? You know, what I'm hearing from you is this, and I resonate with that because I myself have had stories like that or something. But when I say something that proves that I not only have been listening, but that I understand, and you go, that's right, here's why that's so magical. So if you want to practice this stuff, this is what you want to practice. You want to practice getting people this way. If you learn how to get people to the point where they go, you got it. That's right. He gets it, right? They're going to tell people about you because nobody's doing that. But if you can learn how to get people, what's going to happen is that this magical thing happens where whatever it is that you suggest as maybe your product or service, say if you move after that and say something like, here's what I think you're going to love about my program. Here's why I think that this is a perfect fit. Because they know that you get them, they're going to love what you have. They're going to be actually eager to hear. There's something that happens when I know that you understand me and my situation, what I want, why, and why I don't have it, right? What's missing, and all of my struggles and things like that. And you tell me that, and I know you get it. When you provide me with your solution, I can't wait to hear it because finally somebody listened to me. Very, very important. So obviously, very excited to have this course come out. For those of you that are in the Make Sense Academy, and those of you that join the Make Sense Academy and get all the stuff that's included there, you will get the communication breakdown course for free. We're going to be meeting like this once a month. I hope this is something that'll grow. I got to figure out how to let you guys ask questions. That's going to be really, really cool. But once a month, and I'm hoping to have some guests, some master communicators. I'm not going to go through all of the modules. I'll give you little tidbits here and there because this is something I'm going to sell unless you're in the Make Sense Academy. But what is this? Okay, and that's all I have to say about that. But hopefully this stuff was cool. When you get the course, it's going to be in a worksheet, like a workbook, and it's going to be on audio, and you're going to be able to go through it and check off all those things. You're going to have actual assignments that you can do. So hope you love this. This is one of the 6 modules that will make up what's called communication breakdown. And that is not the breakdown of communication. We're going to break it down so that you guys can make it your breakthrough. Love and appreciate you all. Have an amazing night. Sorry for the mishaps, but it's time to go be with my family. Bye-bye now.